Fox Weather hurricane specialist Bryan Norcross with us this hour. Hey, Bryan, we've had a little bit of time to look at the new advisory with it coming in so early. Some slight tweaks to this. Bermuda still needs to watch it carefully, and also I find it interesting when Gabrielle will go through that extratropical transition.
Yeah, we can see that when we look at the upper level winds. It's when the jet stream really gets involved. And now we're not talking about just the warmth of the water. We're talking about energy in the atmosphere between the cold air to the north, the warm air to the south, and so that's called the baroclinic forcing, it's called, to make the storm stronger. So we'll see that when we're going to look at the jet stream here in just a second. But look at this messy looking tropical storm. You look at that on the infrared picture. This is where we're just looking at the tops of the clouds. So if they're big thunderstorms, the tops of the clouds are colder and they get a darker color on our scheme here. So it's got thunderstorms today anyway, which it didn't have much of yesterday. 50 miles per hour is the estimate of the peak winds in that circulation, northwest at 12. So in the general direction of Bermuda, and estimating 1,004 millibars. Now, when we look close up with the visible picture, more like a photograph from space, now we can really see what's going on. There's the circulation, and the thing that has improved since yesterday is that now we have thunderstorms. You can see them developing here and over here related to the circulation. So this is a sign that there is more moisture in the area, and the ability of the storm to produce thunderstorms is increasing as it moves on off to the northwest. Now, when we look at the upper level winds, this is where the problems for the storm are coming from, and look at them here, the direction they're coming. So they're blowing dry air in that way. So that's what's causing it to be disrupted at this point. Now, when we go forward in time with the cone, watch how the upper level winds are forecast to change. Now they're coming more like this along the track of the storm, so they're not injecting sideways the dry air into the storm, and the storm is flowing with the winds, and you don't have that unbalance in how the upper level winds and the lower level winds are working against each other before. Now they're working with each other, so now we're talking about an intensifying storm. As we go forward in time, here you see the winds are picking up, but they're all in the direction of movement, so they have less effect. But then when we go downstream, here comes the jet stream coming in here, and now the jet stream is going to start to affect how the storm works, the inner workings, and that's when we get into that question mark is down here somewhere. Are we going to have a transition into just a North Atlantic storm when the cold air comes and gets involved and the tropical air comes from the south, and now you have a different kind of a tropical, non-tropical machine going. So anyway, it's when it gets up there into those westerlies, that's when those issues come into play. And the models all pretty much agree, and there's less pressure on Bermuda now because we see that the GFS models that had been generally over toward Bermuda, if any of them had, now they've moved off, and only a very few here. So we have 130 different lines there and only 3. So do the math on that. You say a very small chance that some kind of significant effect on Bermuda is going to occur as this goes by late Sunday and Monday, much more likely off to the east, although there will be effects down in the water. Okay, let's look down in the tropical Atlantic, and we have the system that the Hurricane Center is making note of here, just came off of Africa. And then we have the other one that they used to keep note of, but there's no probability of that developing in the next week. And all this is about the next week, but we're going to talk about beyond the next week here in just a moment. But let's look at the development area. If this one is going to develop, it's going to develop relatively soon, but a very, very slight chance of development in this area here. And then it looks like it may die out, or whatever's going to happen to it is going to happen in more than 7 days in the future, is the point. All right, so let's look and see what the European model says here. So we have our two systems. You can kind of make out in the wind flow there, kind of a kink like that, and here we have a kink over here. So those are our two disturbances that we're going to watch moving forward. All right, let's go here through the week, and we get through the weekend, and we get to Monday, and we can kind of make out here a little wave in the flow there and a little wave in the flow over here. But this one has more moisture with it. That's why the Hurricane Center has 20% on this one. This one, you see, it's just very light green. The dry air has really gotten involved in it. The impulse is still there, but there's not much moisture with it, and that's why the Hurricane Center, I don't think that one is going to develop. All right, now we're at Monday. Now, let's go all the way to a week from now, and this one, according to this run of the European model, kind of fades out up in here somewhere. This one shows that it's picking up some moisture and it's getting a bit of a circulation. So I just show this as one example because a number of the computer models after a week from now show some kind of development down in here, or some kind of more inclination to development down in there somewhere. So toward the end of September, after next weekend, this is when we're going to kind of shift our attention from the waters over by Africa to the waters in the Western Caribbean, the Southern Gulf, around the Bahamas, and so forth. It is the time of year to do that, and here the models are indicating that the disturbances are more likely to move over there, and the reason that is the pattern is going to shift. We're going to get more high pressure here, which creates kind of a blocking zone in here where systems can or inclined to stay farther to the south. So anyway, that's all projecting more than a week in advance. It's really just to say that the season of looking at the Western Caribbean and the Gulf and so forth, that looks like it has some possibility that it's actually going to happen, unlike the Atlantic season. This has happened before, where really nothing has happened in the Atlantic and things have happened in the Caribbean and Gulf. I'm not saying they will, but they could. And it's also worked the other way, where nothing has happened in the Caribbean and Gulf and everything has happened in the Atlantic during the hurricane season. So, and nothing too weird here in this fairly unusual hurricane season when we look at the averages, guys.
I do find it interesting, Brian, since we've had Gabrielle, designated as a named storm, the NHC has been paying attention to just off the coast of Africa with a couple of tropical waves. The one, weakening. I know it's still a slight chance, and we'll have to see how it develops. But I mean, to your point, if those waves can survive, then maybe there's something in the Caribbean. But that environment in the MDR just continues to not be the most hospitable.
No, that's the thing. It's just really ugly out there for systems. Look at all the dry air here. It's just all surrounded by dry air here right now. And as long as it's surrounded by dry air, it's going to be very slow to develop. Just has to find just a pocket. So that's why they have very low odds on the Eastern Caribbean. The pattern has been, if you remember, we had this big dip in the jet stream on the East Coast and then a big high pressure system driving dry air down in the Eastern Atlantic. So the Eastern Atlantic has stayed very, very dry this hurricane season. And, this is what happens when we get that kind of a weather pattern. But if the disturbances can make it farther west, then we don't have that weather pattern, and then we'll see what happens. Doesn't mean they're going to develop, but there is some indication, and the computer models are just kind of all over the place, so it's not worth talking about specifics, just the general pattern of being more conducive for development is indicated in the long-range computer models as a broad statement.
Yeah, it's good to know the pattern.
Yeah. I think it offers up, and it's something you had noted before, Brian. You get into the end of September, you get into October, we're entering into the heart of the season. And when we do expect things to pick up, and you look at the numbers, we've had 7 named storms. We've just been really lucky with them going away from land and not having any direct impact. So I always say luck runs out, but perhaps it doesn't.
Maybe not.
We just have to see.
Maybe not.
Maybe not.
It's going to be just a slow hurricane season. Let's cross our fingers.
Yeah, we'll take it. We'll take that as a win. Fox Weather Hurricane Specialist Brian Norcross. Right. Thanks, Brian.